his new book, Battle of Vathapi, Nandi's Charge. Tell us about your journey from an entrepreneur to an author. What was your inspiration?
The book itself I started about 10 years ago. A trip to Aihole, Pattadakkal, Badami, which was Vathapi.
So it's historical fiction, is that right?
Correct. Basically the tale of war of attrition in a sense between the Pallavas and the Chalukyas. Look, I'm not good at writing self-help books. If you think about history writing in India, it's mostly North Indian history, right? Very Delhi-centric, Mughals or something, William Dalrymple will write about the Mughals.
Okay, there's a lot of interest, also a lot of appetite also now that I see. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Anand studio. Today we have another very special guest, Mr. Arun Krishnan. He is an entrepreneur and he is also an author now. And that's what we'll be talking about, his new book, Battle of Vathapi, Nandi's Charge. Namaste, Mr. Arun.
Namaste. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an honor to be speaking to you. First of all, congratulations on your new book.
Thank you.
So we'll talk about that in a little more detail, and I'm also very curious to understand what's in it because I still have to buy it, to be honest. I will be buying it very soon, and definitely the audience will also be buying, whoever is hearing this. Tell us about your journey from an entrepreneur to an author. What was your inspiration?
Well, I wouldn't call it a journey from an entrepreneur to an author because I'm still an entrepreneur. I'm still running my business. The author thing happened on the side. It's been a while, so I've been thinking about writing something actually for over the last 10 years or so. The book itself I started about 10 years ago. I'd written about 100 pages or so, and so it took me a long time. Then I hit the proverbial writer's block, and I left it. And then sometime in 2020, I think it was around July or August, I sent in that not even half finished, my quarter finished manuscript to Garuda Prakashan. And then they took about 3 months, and I had almost forgotten about it. Then suddenly somebody called up and said, "Hey, we are interested in publishing, if you can write the story." So that's how it happened. And then last year, I sat from, let's say, January to March, 3 months, and completed the book.
Okay.
So it's not like I wrote the book over 10 years. I started it 10 years ago, off and on period. Sporadically, I would write a little bit. But the main portions got written last year.
Okay. So you must have done quite a bit of research around this, right? How did that happen? What was your experience?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, look, I've always been interested in history. So I've read a lot about history. I read Nilakanta Shastri's History of South India. I've got R.C. Majumdar's books, the entire 11-volume set. Also, I'd been to Sri Lanka, sometime in 2013, I think it was. So visited a lot of the places there. And also in 2009, I remember we had gone on a Karnataka trip to Aihole, Pattadakkal, Badami, which was Vathapi. So I've kind of visited a lot of the areas that I write about in the book. So the research was both in terms of my travel as well as in reading through history books.
Okay. So it's historical fiction. Is that right?
Correct. Tamilians will recognize the period as that, the same period as that of Sivagami in Sabadam. Kalki's Sivagami in Sabadam. So it's set in the 7th century of the Common Era, and it's basically the tale of the war of attrition, in a sense, between the Pallavas and the Chalukyas. Okay. So that's what it's centered around. And then so basically there are facts, and then you try and weave a story around it.
Okay. Okay. So, why did you specifically choose this subject?
You mean this subject as in
Yeah,
historical fiction or?
historical fiction.
No, I always wanted to write.
Okay.
Look, I'm not good at writing self-help books.
Okay.
I don't like reading self-help books, and I find I think I probably read two self-help books in my life.
Okay.
So that's not something I enjoy. Um, and I wanted to write fiction, but then I realized, one of the things is when I read the Meluha series by Amish Tripathi,
Hmm. Hmm.
that also kind of, you know, poked me into writing something with
Hmm.
a historical bent. I always had a historical bent. My father's side hails from Tanjore, so you know how steeped
Lot
in
of
history
history.
that region is.
Definitely.
So, but I think also seeing how successful Amish was in portraying a period, an ancient period, in a very modern way. So I figured I would do something similar, except that my knowledge of our own itihasas and puranas, while it's good, it's a layman's knowledge. There are so many others who are super well versed at it and who would do a greater, much better job at it. So I thought, okay, let me write something about a period of history that's not much written about.
Hmm.
Although in Tamil, yes, Kalki, the immortal Kalki, has
Yeah.
done wonders to that period. But other than that, if you think about history writing in India, it's mostly North Indian history, right? Very Delhi centric, Mughals or something. William Dalrymple will write about the Mughals, and then there are other folks who write about other stuff. So I thought, let me write about South Indian kingdoms, and show how everything was connected in a sense in India, in ancient India.
Yeah, I think a lot of these kind of books have come up in the recent past, I would think, if I'm not wrong. Because there's a lot of interest, also a lot of appetite also now that I see. So why Nandi's charge? What is the relevance of that to this book?
So Nandi, look, Pallavas had two different emblems that they used interchangeably. One was the Nandi, the other was the Simha, the lion, right? And I think Mahendra Varma Pallava, he used the Nandi, and later on Narasimha used the Simha.
Got it.
And so, since the story starts off kind of with a promise that Narasimha makes to Mahendra Varman, his father, I kind of decided to call it Nandi's Charge, which is eventually it's a revenge tale, right? Because
Ah,
at one point Pulikeshi had come down and defeated Mahendra Varma and come down very close to Kanchi. And so the idea was that when Narasimha eventually goes back and sacks Vathapi, it's a sort of revenge that he's taking on behalf of his father. His father is no more, but he kind of does what he had promised his father. That's my premise. And so
very
that's why
interesting.
I call
Very
it
interesting.
Nandi's Charge. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Cool. So, what kind of a feel do you want to leave your readers with after reading this book? What was in your mind?
I think of I've spoken about this in the past. I think
Hmm.
of myself more as a storyteller. Okay, so when I'm telling a story, I want the readers to go away with a good understanding of that period and of having read an interesting story of that period. I'm not here to vilify somebody or deify somebody either. So, people had asked me, okay, you're a Tamilian and you're writing about Vathapi and Pallavas in Chalukya. So are you going to take a pro-Tamil stance at it? I'm like, no. To me, these were not Tamil
Hmm.
kings or Kannada kings, right? Pulikeshi's empire extended all the way to Gujarat and Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh of what is now called these states, right?
Right.
Uh, Pallavas were Tamilians. Some say they were of Telugu descent. Who cares? I mean, they were two great kingdoms in this part of the land, and I'm writing about it. And I'm not saying Narasimhavarma was good and Pulikeshi was evil. No, they were not. They were just two kings who were trying to expand their empires at the same time, and they ran up against each other. So, in fact, there's one line. I've given one line to Pulikeshi where Pulikeshi has gone to Aryapura, or what is now called Aihole, and he's talking to his chief architect Ravi Kirti.
Okay.
And he says, I hear this Narasimha Varma is building some temples in Mamallapuram. And the Ravi Kirti says, yeah, I heard the same. He looks like he's like you. He's also a lover of the arts. And Pulikeshi laughs and says, yeah, in another day and age, maybe he and I could have been friends, but we are kings and emperors now. So we have to do what's right by our kingdom.
Hmm.
So
Very
to me,
interesting.
that actually is my thought, in a sense, my thought that, there's, when we typically read a historical fiction, there's always an attempt to have one who is good and the other who is evil, because as a writer it becomes easy to write when you have clearly defined good versus evil. Whereas when you're writing something, my position is somewhat different. It's like I am an uninterested observer, or not, I wouldn't say uninterested, I'm a disinterested observer who's standing outside and telling the story of what happened then. And I'm not making any value judgments on who's a good person, who's bad. They are both great kings. How do you say someone is good and someone is bad? So I want people
Agree.
to go away with the idea that they learned something, they learned about the history of these times, and they also learned about an interesting story, right? At the end of it, if it's just a history book, it'll get boring.
Yeah.
So there has to be enough masala in it that it makes it interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. So, did you talk to some people like Amish during this whole, I'm going to say, journey, or during your writing? Were you talking
No,
to some people? Yeah.
no. I spoke to Amish only after I had written the book,
Oh,
and
okay.
he was kind enough to endorse it, and I sent him the book, and
Very
he was
nice.
kind enough to do that. And that's another thing that's amazed me during this entire journey of mine is how helpful people have been. For example, Vivek Devroy ji
Hmm.
is another person who had given me the this thing, and there was no, they're such busy people, and
Yeah.
for them to take time
Hmm.
off and read a book from a debut author and then endorse it, I just hope I can pay it forward at some point to somebody who would need it.
Definitely. And I know you also talked to Anand Ranganathan. I mean, there was an interview recently, so that
Yes,
was
again,
also
Anand
really good.
also did the same, right? He also
Yeah.
did the book, and so it's all of these people who had really, there was no need for them to do what they did, but they were very, very kind, very kind. They've just been very touched by these gestures.
Surely, surely. And I already see a lot of good reviews about your book. So that's a great sign, right?
Thank
So,
you so much for
yeah,
that.
you must have also
Yes,
seen that. I was seeing in Amazon also that, okay, there are so many people who are kind of responding to it. So that's a great sign. Okay, people have to read all the different kind of genres and even related to our history, right? And those parts of India that are not still yet exposed. Okay, all of us don't know the whole of India yet. Okay, even though we are living in India for such a long time. Okay,
yes,
so that's quite important. That's quite important. I think the appetite has grown quite a lot. I'm seeing just from my observation.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I
yeah,
think there is a people like, you have to give a lot of credit to people like Sanjeev Sanyal, for example, right,
yeah,
who've written these
agree,
popular books on history, which
agree.
have really made people rethink about the way we were taught history. I mean, like he says, how many of us have heard of Lasit Barfukan in Assam? And
Hmm.
that great commander had defeated Aurangzeb's army on the Brahmaputra. Or how many of us had heard of Martanda Varma, whose naval fleet defeated the Dutch fleet? We've never read of it. In history
Exactly.
books, we are not taught about it. So I think there is this, people like him deserve a lot of credit for bringing it to the fore, so that people like me can then jump in and start writing stories about it.
But it's good. We need all the different kinds of aspects to this. So that's
Yes,
definitely good.
absolutely.
It's very healthy. It's very healthy. So are you working on your next book already, or what is the plan?
Oh yeah. It's already. In fact, I was,
Wow.
just before this call, I was writing the book.
Oh, okay.
Already well into it. Probably about 120 pages
Superb.
into that book.
Superb.
So it's coming along. I'm hoping to, my internal deadline for myself is by May end. I need to finish this book,
May end.
because then
Okay.
the editorial process takes time. It takes at least 6 months or so to do the other stuff that needs to be done.
Got
So
it. Got it.
so yeah, hopefully by end of this year, if not or early next year, the second book should come out.
Wow. Looking forward to that, but I'll definitely go and buy this one. Okay, right away.
Yes, and I'd love to
on my
hear your
cards.
feedback once you read it. Yes.
Surely, and I'll take your autograph too on that.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely, no problem. We
Surely.
live near each other, so we can...
Surely. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks
Great
a lot.
talking to you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Namaskar.